Hello, my name is Russell Myers, independent for U.S. President for 2024. In recent years, we have seen a now popular political figure that has made the proposal of a federally guaranteed jobs program. Most people do not understand the play on words being used here because it is a play on words. Let me explain. I will use a comparison of federal student loans. When people refer to the federal student loan program, many are under the impression that those loans are being issued directly by the federal government to the student. This is erroneous. The actual term for this program is federally guaranteed student loans. The fact is, the loans are not issued by the government. The loans are issued by corporate banking systems. The government acts as a cosigner and administrator for the loans. If the student defaults on a loan, the federal government pays the bank. Thus, the bank takes absolutely no risk in issuing the loan. Federally guaranteed. Guaranteed to the bank. And anyway, that is a more complex subject, and this is the only part applicable to the subject at hand. With the jobs program which was proposed, the same deception applies. With this suggested program, the jobs would not be federal jobs. The way it would work would be that if an private employer agrees to hire workers, the federal government would pay the wages of the workers. The effect of this would be a welfare program for the employers. All they have to do to be eligible is to make the claim that they would not otherwise be hiring workers. Basically, they could impose a hiring freeze or be laying workers off, claiming that wages for the workers is too high of an expense for their bloated profit margins. The federal government pays the wages, subsidizing the profit margins. Meanwhile, the effect on the labor market would be to drive wages down. There would be absolutely no incentive for employers to increase wages for workers when there is no competition for workers. This program would also make it mandatory for the workers to accept employment. The most insane part of this is that this is what passes for a progressive policy proposal. And the figure who proposed it is considered by many to be leftist based on his rhetoric, while his actions, like this, tend to be extremely deceptive. My proposal is far different. Some of this I have covered in a different way in my statement regarding smaller government. I am against smaller government and want to expand the number of federal jobs. My proposal is for guaranteed federal jobs, meaning the federal government would directly hire workers at a living wage with better benefits that are typically offered by private employers. Do you see the difference here? Federally guaranteed jobs versus guaranteed federal jobs. Wording is everything. There is nothing deceptive in my wording, ever. The federal government could create jobs in healthcare, mental health, direct infrastructure repair and construction, elderly care, home health, and many other fields. This could be done in communities of any size and any location, many of which lack jobs of virtually any kind at this time. This would be done in coordination with the citizens of local communities to determine what kind of services are needed, where the services should be located, etc. The benefits to this would be many. Among them would be many of these positions would be permanent, not temporary. That means this would offer financial stability at the personal level as well as doing the same for the general economy. Bankruptcies at the personal and small business level would decrease. Communities would benefit from improved health and living conditions as well as stable tax revenue. In many cases, this would revitalize low-income and rural communities that have high rates of poverty and unemployment. Crime rates would decrease, allowing for more funding for services which benefit people instead of funding an ever-increasing militarized police presence, jails, and prisons. Rates of addiction, depression, and suicide would decrease dramatically. Along with decreased addiction rates, the rate of bloodborne pathogens, like hepatitis, passed through shared or dirty needles would decrease. Quality of medical care for the most vulnerable would drastically improve. Infrastructure would be safer, more efficient, and more visually appealing. Real wages and benefits in private industries would improve due to the competition for workers to keep their industries functioning. The expenses to the taxpayer and the national debt would be far less expensive than hiring private contractors to do similar work. This would mean that the expense to the economy would offer greater benefit at the same cost. As an example, if a private contractor is hired to build a road and requires a 25% profit margin, direct federal workers making the same rate of pay could build 100 miles of road for the same cost as 75 miles of road would cost from a contractor. For this amount of money, more of that money would be returned to the general economy in the form of wages, which would turn into consumer spending, improving the economy. Meanwhile, the higher wages and increased employment would help offset the cost due to increased income tax revenue. States and municipalities would benefit from increased sales and property tax revenue without having to increase current tax rates. This would occur as a matter of volume and monetary velocity. A side note is that when we pay corporations to perform services, the profits from the expenses are largely removed from the economy, used to buy back corporate stock and or held in offshore accounts. This reduces monetary velocity and weakens the dollar. Corruption would be far less prevalent, considering that bribes and backdoor deals would be less common. Each project or program would require publicly accessible accounting with no need for a FOIA request to examine the records. There would be no revolving door between government and corporate donors where these projects and programs were created. Lastly, the projects involved, when involving local communities and using valid environmental impact studies, would mean that projects would have far less negative impact on the environment. Is this proposal perfect? Not by a long shot. But it stands as a good starting point, which could be fine-tuned along the way. There is no question that private industries and the elected officials who benefit directly from those private industries will fight proposals like this tooth and nail, which means that public support and involvement will be absolutely necessary from the ground up. Private industries will try using claims like stating that this would destroy jobs. That just means that projects will have to be constructed in such ways that plan on these arguments and disprove each challenge. That would not be difficult because the opposing arguments will be highly predictable. Please share this article or video. Talk about these proposals widely and help expand awareness about this campaign. I cannot do this without your help. It is a sad fact of our current system that a political campaign does require money. So if you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this campaign. Every penny helps. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.